Hello, savvy listeners. I am excited you are taking the time to invest in yourself today. Savvy, the business podcast, will show you how your daily habits can create your own platform. Experts will share solutions and efficient tips to create a roadmap just for you. One thing that can make this happen: change your habits, change your success. Welcome to Savvy, the business podcast. Hi, welcome to Savvy, the business podcast. I'm Melissa Amber, host, and we have Justin Pogue on today. We're getting into some real estate questions and conversation. That's a little different than where we normally go, but everybody needs and need to understand the real game out there, some of the tricks, do's, don'ts. And we'll, hit on some of those. And if we don't hit on anything that you're looking for, you will definitely have an opportunity to connect with Justin directly to see if he can help you with some of those questions or concerns that you may be having. So before we get started, I want to read you a little bit about Justin's bio so you can know a little bit about who he is. Justin Pogue is an award-winning author and real estate consultant based in San Jose, California. His book, Rental Secrets, has already helped so many people across the country. Fox News, the Mercury News, SF Gate, Realtor.com, and ApartmentTherapy.com have all featured his insights for the benefit of their audience. He got his start in real estate by purchasing properties on the lands available listed in the state of Florida. Since 2003, he has developed and managed apartments, rental homes, and student housing across the U.S. He also holds a degree in economics from the Wharton School, as well as MBA from Darden School at the University of Virginia. Now, Justin, real estate, that is tricky for a lot of people, not only as individuals that really don't understand everything about real estate besides I need to buy a home, put some floors in it, a roof on it, the basic things. So one, as a real estate agent, what would make you write a book? Is it because of some of your clients that you've come across that didn't know a lot of the things that you thought that they should know, or what made you go in that direction?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your podcast. We're going to share some really great information with your audience here.
Okay.
I do want to clarify something, though. I am not actually a real estate agent. And most people may not know this, but if you actually are going to own property and rent it, you're not necessarily required to be a real estate agent, especially if it's your property that you own and that you're managing. So I've never actually held a real estate agent license in any state across the country while I've been doing all of this. Mm-hmm. And what you pointed out in the intro is very true. Most people come into adulthood and they have no knowledge of real estate work, how real estate works, or any of that. They also have no knowledge of what the process of renting real estate even looks like. And unfortunately, that's where most people start when they leave college. When they leave college, I need two things: a job and a place to live. And that, finding that place to live, college, there weren't any classes on that in college. So you're just kind of out there kind of flying by the seat of your pants, learning as you go, which is not necessarily the best way to go about it.
Right. So, I mean, and thanks for clarifying that. But when, like you say, you own real estate, that pushes me in the direction of flipping. You have all of these shows on TV, flipping houses, was it Good Bones, and all these other shows that's out there. And it looks, of course, TV makes it look super easy, and they do all of this stuff within an hour, which we know that is not realistic. But if someone wanted to get into flipping or purchasing land, what would be one of the first things you would tell them to do?
One of the first steps I would tell people to do is find a local real estate club. Join into that community. These are people who have already done what you're looking to do. They already know the people that you need to talk to down at the county recorder's office or at the city office, depending on jurisdiction. Um, they likely already have contacts with contractors in the area. And people are generally good about sharing tips and tricks that they've learned through their process with people who are new. So local real estate investment clubs are an excellent resource that most people don't think about. And that's a really good place to start.
Wow.
Another place that people, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
This place that people can start is in the library. All the books in the library are free.
Mhm.
And a lot of those books will still talk about different concepts that you'll need to know as an investor. They'll start defining a lot of those terms for you, that
Right.
kind of thing. You can also search online. The online search kind of, it opens up the whole world to you at once, and some people may get overwhelmed. So it may be better to like choose a couple of books to start with, read those, digest that, and then you're more informed when you move forward with your real estate investment plans.
Right. So if someone, have these plans and um, they think it's, just easy. Oh, okay, I passed by this property or land and I just want to make a purchase. Let me call the number and, buy it. What
Mhm.
are some of the common mistakes that people make when that happens?
Well, when you buy a piece of property, you're also buying your neighbors. You're also buying the neighborhood that it is in. Not just, oh, this is a great piece of property. I love the way this house looks, all of that. Who are the neighbors on either side of that property? Are they taking care of their property? What amenities are available in the neighborhood? Is there a park nearby? Can people walk to shopping? These are all things that whoever you rent that property to, or whoever comes behind you and buys that property, they're going to be looking at those aspects to see, what is this property actually worth?
Right. Well, in your book, do you have all these type of tips and information for just the average individual, or do they need to have some type of knowledge of real estate?
My book is written for people who have absolutely no knowledge of real estate, and it focuses on people who are going into renting or people who are renting. Um, and the goal really is to share tips and tricks that renters can use that to negotiate better for what they're paying for rent. And it's not a legal book by any means. It's more about the market relationship between renters and landlords and what things can renters do to help their landlords, and then use those items as negotiation tactics when they're working on how much to pay for rent each month.
Okay. I'm glad you said that about it not being, the legal piece of it, because, I was going to say, okay, how difficult is it for someone to read a book like that and understand the language that goes into real estate? So, we have the books where it's, books for dummies that makes it
Mhm,
super, super simple.
mhm.
How is your book easy for the average person to read without having to sit next to a dictionary or internet to research every other sentence?
That's a really great question. And actually, when I was writing the book, I learned this about Microsoft Word. You can actually take what you've written, and it will analyze what you wrote and see what grade level you actually wrote at. And I just learned this when I was writing the book.
Wow.
So the book itself is written at a ninth grade level.
Okay.
So it's really accessible to everyone who's going to be in the situation of renting. Um, and it's really written for people to read quickly and then actually take what they learned from the book, apply it out in the real world. I didn't want to write a 300-page book full of SAT words for people to try and wrestle through,
Right.
because nobody's going to read it honestly.
Right.
So I thought it much better to actually write something that the average person could read and understand and digest quickly, and then go out and use. So it would be beneficial to their life in pretty short order.
Right. So with this being something that the average person can read, um, what are your suggestions of, okay, if you're in the real estate, why would they purchase your book opposed to, other real estate books out there? What would make yours the book to buy and to start reading?
Yeah. So you're really asking me about where this book came from and why did I write it? And I was sitting in the bookstore. I'm looking at the real estate section because I even being in real estate, I'm looking for new concepts and new ideas that I can use in what I'm doing. Uh, and I'm looking at the shelves and I noticed something really odd. There were books for managers and investors, and but there weren't any books dedicated to renters. And I'm like, that struck me as really odd because there are 43 million households out there who are bringing money to the table every month to float the entire real estate investment industry. And there weren't any books dedicated to those people. So that's where I started writing this book, because you can get professional advice buying a car, you can get professional advice buying appliances, but when it comes down to the largest expense that most people have in their budget, there wasn't any advice that I was really finding out there. There were a few articles here or there,
Right.
but there weren't really any professionals that people could tap into. Um, and that's where this book came from. And it really starts with, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Does it tap into commercial and residential?
So my book focuses on residential. Some of the concepts are applicable to commercial, but I wrote on residential because that's where my background is, and that's what the average person is dealing with. You may have heard the line in a number of movies that, ain't nothing going on but the rent. Well, for a lot of people, that's where they're at.
Mhm.
Um, and that's where they can use some help. And that's where this book focuses.
Wow. Yeah, and you're right. Ain't nothing going on but the rent. um, with the year that so many people have had, we've all had in 2020, and there's a lot of people that have lost their homes or is losing their homes. Is there a resource or something in your book that can help them to try to get back on track, or give them some information they may not know about to keep their home or to purchase another home?
So when you're in a rental situation, your ability to negotiate with your landlord, whether it be an individual or a property management company, is critical. And in order to negotiate with them effectively, you need to know what their problems are. And that's what Rental Secrets really talks about, is these are the problems that landlords have in running their property, in doing the things that they need. And these are the ways that you as a renter can help. And knowing what they're dealing with and knowing how you can help, now you have a basis for, okay, these are the problems I know you have. This is how I help. This is what I know my help is worth to you. So now let's talk about my monthly rent amount and where we can come to a happy medium. And whether you're at the point of not having rented something, whether you need to rent something again because you've left where you were, or even if you're in the process of eviction now, having that knowledge of what the landlord's problems are can help you in those conversations. I think a lot of people get overwhelmed and frustrated whenever they have to deal with their landlord. They're actually looking at that as it's not going to be a happy conversation.
Right.
This is somebody that I don't want to be talking to. Um, but there are really valuable opportunities that renters have to negotiate with their landlords in those conversations.
Okay. What about the landlords from hell?
There are many of them out there, and that's it's also one of the reasons why I wrote this book, because you can, in dealing with those types of landlords, people really don't know what their options are. They really don't know how they should be treated. They really don't they really don't know that the landlord should be valuing the relationship that they have with that tenant, as opposed to treating that tenant, in fact, in some cases, even like garbage. Like,
Yeah,
you're there to service me, as opposed to, this is a business, I am here to service you.
absolutely.
And that's really the way landlords should be looking at their properties. Um, so if there is someone who's dealing with a landlord from hell, it it will absolutely help you to look, when you have conversations with them, speak to them in their language. That will help. It's not just, oh, I need you to do this, I need you to do that. When you speak to them in their language, this is the cost of what you are doing. Now they may start to think a little bit differently in their dealings with you.
Mhm.
Um, and that just flipping that perspective just a little bit can help. Because I tell you, there are a lot of landlords out there who just feel they're stressed out, they're overwhelmed, they feel like they're out in the middle of the ocean with their hand barely above the water. Because being a landlord can be very stressful. And instead of piling on to that stress, let them know that there are ways that you may be able to help them, and maybe even you may even be throwing them a lifeline at a time when they really need it, and that may help you to break through that outer shell that they present, where that they are this landlord from hell.
Mhm. Yeah. And I'm gonna flip it on the other side. What if you do
Mhm.
have those landlords and they want to make the change and they're, yes, they're there to make money. If they don't get paid the rent, I mean, they still have to pay, the taxes and whatever fees that they have to have. They're not, the bills aren't stopping. And
Mhm.
granted, yeah, you may have someone that has an excellent history paying on time. You don't have any issues with them. They keep the property, or, front, everything looking nice all the time. And now I got to put them out, but I don't want to put them out because, I get it, I understand. But at the same time, we have to start collecting rent. What do you say
Right.
to the landlords that's in those positions of, I don't know what to do, but
Mhm.
I know it's not right. I want to give them a chance. I don't know what to do. They just don't
Mhm.
know what to do.
There are actually a few really interesting options from that perspective. So the landlord has the opportunity to have that conversation with the renter. That's the first thing. Get in there, have the conversation, see where that individual actually is at, um, and start there. There are also a number of agencies and nonprofits that will actually step into some of those situations and provide 1 month of rent, or help resolve the situation and help get that person back on their feet. Especially if that person is employed and is able to make the situation sustainable after an initial bit of help.
Yeah.
Um, Thirdly, I'd say, even if the situation is not salvageable and you do have to go through the eviction process with that person,
Mhm.
you may not even have to go through a legal eviction process. And what I mean by that is, you and that renter may come to an understanding where you'll move out, that person will move out after a month, and the landlord may even give that person three or $400 or $500 to move on, as opposed to going through a long drawn out legal process, which may last months and is going to cost thousands of dollars, not only in terms of legal fees, but lost rent and the cost of having to re-rent that apartment again later on. Um, so that all feeds into understanding what problems the landlord's facing, and knowing where you can have some influence to reduce those problems, and make the situation as positive as possible for both parties involved.
That's interesting to hear and to know that. So hopefully, everyone that's listening, is getting this, and there'll be opportunities towards the end where Justin will leave his information so you can contact him directly. And, excuse me, and see how he can help you, or what additional information that he can give you if you are in one of these situations. Now, we talked about someone that's renting property. What if they are not a renter and they are paying a mortgage and
Hmm.
they're, in this situation? Of course, this instance, they won't have a landlord, but they'll have this mortgage company or bank that they will have to deal with for this exact same reason.
Hmm.
What advice would you have for them?
Absolutely don't wait to contact the bank, because there's nothing more unsettling than having loaned somebody money and you don't know what their situation is. All you know is that they're not paying.
Yeah.
um, so actually, as the borrower, reach out to your lending institution, whoever they may be, and most of them at this point have an official process that they take people through who are having economic hardship because of what's going on, and go through that process, get that ball rolling now, because as time passes, rules will change. um Lending institutions may end up having creating less favorable settlements with people. And so it's important to get that ball rolling now, as quickly as possible. That way everybody involved knows what's happening and everybody's all on the same page.
Okay. Explain economic hardship. You mentioned that. So define
Mhm.
that for people that's not quite sure if they fall in that category.
Okay. So economic hardship is, well, actually, let me back up. So when you applied for that loan, they took you through an approval process.
Correct.
You had some level of income when you applied for that loan. You had some level of savings. um the property that you were buying was worth a certain amount, and they go through this process. Now, though, that situation has changed.
Yeah.
Your job may have been deemed non-essential, so you no longer have that income. You may have had, and it may be a situation where you've lost that job, or you found another job that didn't necessarily pay as much as that previous job. But anyway, circumstances have changed, and if that payment is not something that you can continue making based on the income that you have now, then that is economic hardship. So now it's a matter of analyzing what the situation is currently, what can be done reasonably in that situation, and then the bank will make a determination as to whether we can work this out by restructuring the loan,
Right.
or we'll have to work this out in a foreclosure route. Okay. Once they have determination, now you can actually start planning for what you need to do. So clarity is a really fantastic gift in this situation, because it's the unknowns that stress everybody out.
Yeah. Yeah. So with for entrepreneurs, most of them, you know, have lost their businesses, and the ones that haven't fully had to close the doors is super, super tight, just keeping the doors open, let alone giving themselves a check to try to, personally, take care of some
Mhm.
things. Would you say the same advice for someone that is self-employed?
Yeah, I mean the advice related to self-employed people is similar, um, and it actually brings up an interesting point, because as an entrepreneur, more you've dealt with chaos in situations similar to this before. I mean, you have that's been woven into your DNA because you had to build this thing out of scratch from nothing. Um, your employees don't have that. They're not from that situation. Um, so that negotiation between your mortgage holder or your landlord or whoever that may be is really important, and a lot of the entrepreneurs, they have a leg up in that conversation because they've had to negotiate everything they've created and they've done it from scratch. So the other thing I would say is if those entrepreneurs have employees, help them negotiate and navigate what they're dealing with, because you have expertise that they most likely don't have, because employees and entrepreneurs look at things from a very different perspective.
That's a great point. That you're already a negotiator as a business owner because you have to negotiate your deals with vendors and everything else that you will have to deal with, regardless of what industry or field that you're in. You have to negotiate. So that's a great point to share your knowledge with your employees or
Yeah.
your contractors. That's a great point. Um, that you shared that. How would you recommend? No, I won't say recommend, but with this the real estate is what you say is someone that wants to either purchase a home again because they lost it in 2020 or they've never purchased a home and they want to go ahead. Okay, it's 2021. Things are sort of starting to look up. What would you say about the real estate right now? Is it a good time for people to jump on or just hold on for a minute?
It always depends on people's individual situations and what they need. But the way I would present it is this. I think people need to look at purchasing real estate differently. There was an amazing show on HGTV, and it was called Income Property. And it focused on people who wanted to buy their first property, but it was focused on people helping people to buy a duplex instead of a single family house. The idea was I can live in one side of the house and I can rent the other side of the house, and that will help me cover my mortgage.
Mm.
So looking at these kind of concepts around what's becoming known as house hacking, where your house is not only a place to live, but it is also a source of revenue and income as well. And it can take the form of that duplex, or it can take the form of actually renting rooms in your house and creating a roommate situation. But ultimately being more flexible as far as the mental perception of what a home is and how I use my home will serve people well going forward. Um, because the economic and financial situations are getting much more complicated than they used to be. Um, I'll tell you something else too. Another form of house hacking can be I rent a 2-bedroom apartment and I have a roommate. So everywhere along the spectrum, there are opportunities and ways to reduce the cost of living, um, which will open up opportunities for saving money, investing for either for retirement or starting a business, or re or kickstarting themselves or restarting after suffering whatever they suffered in 2020.
Okay. So any type of situation, whether you buy a home, apartment, duplex, whatever it is, anytime you buy something like that and you rent out a room or the other half of the house or the garage or whatever,
Mhm.
that falls under house hacking.
That would fall under house hacking. And
Okay.
there's a number of different ways to do it, and it all depends on an individual situation and what people are comfortable with. People may not necessarily be comfortable with renting rooms in their home because they're raising children and that kind of thing. But if they got into a duplex situation, they would be more comfortable with that because it's a separate unit. Um, Although, if you're younger and you're single, the roommate situation might work out well for you. It's similar to what you were doing in college, and it allows you to plug into your roommates for, for social networking, professional networking, and those other opportunities. Um, so it's really there's some self-assessment that needs to happen as far as what you want and what you're willing to deal with in terms of risk tolerance and all of that. But there are opportunities out there to take what you may already have and use that to generate some income for you to help you through what's been going on.
Okay. It with if you do have a roommate or a separate duplex, do a renter have to worry about any additional costs as far as like, insurance, taxes, or that FYI type of insurance, I mean CYA type of insurance to where they have to be sure they're covering themselves if that rent the person they're renting to causes any type of issues, damage or anything. Do
Absolutely. So you would absolutely have homeowners insurance,
of course.
and the people that you are renting to should also have renters insurance. Um, and that just helps to make sure that everybody is protected and everybody is taken care of. And especially the renters insurance is typically not very expensive.
No, it's not.
um but it makes sure that everybody who's involved is covered, and it helps everybody sleep at night.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this has been interesting with a lot of things, and with the economic hardship, house hacking, and because mostly when they hear the word, anything like hacking or something, you think it's a scam or something about it just isn't right. And thank you for explaining that and helping us to understand what house hacking is, and that it's okay to house hack
Mhm. Yep.
when they hear that word. Is there any other tips or recommendations you could give someone that's, in real estate looking to buy or having issues with a landlord?
The first thing I would say this: when you're looking to rent or buy, start with looking at the actual property itself, and then look at the neighborhood. As a matter of fact, talk to your potential neighbors. What is this? What is the park at the end of the block like? Or in a rental situation, does the property management company actually come and repair things when they're supposed to be fixed?
Yeah.
Um, Ask people what the street parking is like, because you may not necessarily have a dedicated parking space. And typically, when people go to look at properties, they're looking at it in the middle of the day. Well, at 6 o'clock, the parking situation is going to look a whole lot different than it
Completely.
looks at the middle of the day. Right. um, so those are the types of things that people need to be looking at. It's not just the property, it's what's going on around the property, what's in the environment, what's in the neighborhood, how are those neighbors interacting with each other. All of those things matter too, because you're going to be living there, you're going to be in this environment, and it's important to make sure that it's a place that you actually want to be. Um, that way you can take advantage of the benefits of being there longer term, as opposed to moving every year or every other year because the initial choice didn't fit you very well. Um, so that's definitely the piece of advice that I would pass on.
Okay. One thing we did not hit on while we was having this conversation is new homes.
Hmm.
We go on these subdivisions, and most of the time they're empty if you go when they're first starting. But if not, it's just everybody's clean. The houses are good. There's not a lot of parking on the streets or anything because everybody's in their driveway. It's a new house, new subdivision. And most people don't park on the streets because they know the big trucks are still coming through there with the wood and all these supplies because they're still building homes. Um, what would you say to someone that's looking to build? Because I've been asked the question because I've built a couple of times, And I always tell people, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I always tell people, when you go in and you go through that process and they say, okay, well, you're pre-approved for $300,000. Don't go get a $300,000 house, because whatever your mortgage turn out to be is going to go up, because they're still building, and you don't know what schools, grocery stores, or whatever else is going to happen around there to make those taxes go up. And so
Hmm.
many think, oh, well, my rate is locked in and it's not going to go up. It's not your mortgage rate, it's the taxes. You can't help what the
Hmm.
taxes are going to do, and that will affect your monthly mortgage note. So if
Yeah.
you're approved for 300, go with like 220, 250 to give you that
Mhm.
cushion, because it's going to go up.
Yeah, I love that advice. Um, and part of the reason I love that advice is because you determine what you are going to pay.
Yeah.
Don't let the bank determine that for you. The bank doesn't know what your job is like. They don't know what your finances are like, other than at the surface level. You need to determine what your payment is going to be and what you are comfortable with. And it's the same thing with renting. The landlord doesn't determine what you pay, you determine what you can pay. And you need to do that before that conversation even happens. Um, the other thing about buying new build property is when you go into the subdivision, what they show you is the model home.
Mhm.
And the model home, it's very beautiful, it's very nice, it has all the bells and whistles in it.
Yep.
Those are upgrades
Yep.
that you're seeing. And
Yes.
it's very important to understand how much those upgrades are. That furniture package is an upgrade.
Mhm.
That fancy, fireplace, that's an upgrade. So figure out what those are and what the difference between those and the base model is. Um, and that way you can plan intelligently about what you want to do. And they do the same thing in rentals too. You may walk into an apartment and it will be staged,
Yes.
and they will have furniture in there and lamps and art hanging on the wall and these fancy curtains and all of this other stuff. None of that stuff is staying unless you're paying for it. So don't be swayed by the staging. Focus on what it is that you actually need and make your decisions based on that.
Yeah. The only thing that I really like about staging, and granted, some of them are just beautiful, beautiful,
Hmm.
but I like about staging because it gives you that real visual on
Hmm.
how furniture sits. Because when you're
Hmm.
in an empty room and trying to imagine a sofa here, a king size bed, or whatever, when they stage it, and if it's a queen size bed, you're like, okay, well, I can fit the king in here comfortably, instead of
Hmm.
looking at a huge empty room. And by the time you put that bed in there, like, ooh, where all my space go? So
Right.
I think that for me, that is the
Hmm.
purpose of staging, to give me that visual to really say, okay, because I know what furniture I'm going to want to purchase, or furniture I'm bringing from an existing home
Hmm.
into this property. So that gives me that idea of how I can lay things, or if I could go buy bigger or new or whatever. So for
Yeah.
me, that's what I like about the stage, besides the beautiful look of it.
Right. No, it does serve a purpose. It's be careful about I'm saying be careful about the emotion that staging may cause in as you're thinking about that property. Um because that that whatever that staging is bringing out in you, it won't be there when you put your furniture in there,
No, it
because your
will
furniture
not.
is going to look different.
It's not. Including the accessories. It is not.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. um so I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah. Um, so the other interesting thing about new build property is that in many cases you do get some type of warranty with the home, as far as the structure and the appliances and so forth. So if you do run into some kind of problem, you are able to contact the builder and get those things rectified within a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
Um, And if that's factoring into your buying process, then you also want to be looking at what is the reputation of that contractor who worked on your particular home or who was working in that subdivision, um, to really see, are they doing quality work? What is going on in that on that property, and how was it constructed? um, and don't just kind of ooh and ah at how great it looks. But also look at things like, which appliances are in there. What is the longevity of those appliance brands? What are the reviews of the appliances that are being put into this particular subnet?
Yeah.
Um, those kinds of questions. And if you're not buying new, if you're buying an existing home, one of the tricks that sometimes sellers use is they paint the place so everything looks all nice and bright and new and everything.
Pretty.
And that paint may be covering up deferred maintenance, things that they didn't bother to take the time to repair prior, that you will then be stuck with when you end up buying that property.
But that goes to making sure you pick out a good appraiser to come in and really fine tooth comb, go through that place,
Mhm.
front, back, top to bottom.
Yeah, there are inspectors that will come in and do inspections prior to
That's
purchase.
not appraiser. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Inspector.
Unfortunately, they can't open walls though.
That is true.
So there's some limitations to what inspectors can do, but by all means, absolutely have an inspector go through the property and look for things. And any things that the inspector finds, those then become negotiation points. When we go back to the seller and say, well, these three things were wrong, and I need some kind of credit to cover this because I'm gonna have to fix it.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're right. So, wow, these were a lot of good, excellent tips that you shared today and good information. So, anyone is, looking to purchase, I mean, here you have it. I mean, you received a lot of great information, and you have to go purchase the book as well. So, Justin, let everyone know where they can purchase the book and how they can reach out to you.
Yeah, the name of the book is Rental Secrets. It's available on Amazon and all the other online booksellers. It's also available in audio format as well as ebook format. And my website is rentalsecrets.net. And also, if you're willing to connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, I post a daily tip for renters, that people can use in their average everyday lives.
Wow. Well, thank you again, Justin, for coming on Savvy the Business podcast. I enjoyed the conversation. It was really enlightening. And I'm sure everyone that's going to see this interview currently 6 months from now, a year from now, that this information is still relevant. It's not going to
Absolutely.
change because we always need a place to stay. So homes, they're here for the journey. So
Yep.
thanks again, Justin, for coming on and sharing all this information.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure.
Thank you. Have a good one.
All right. You too.
All right, bye. Go to Barnes& and Noble and Amazon today to purchase Rental Secrets by Justin Pogue.